Level 1. Deputy Marshal Trainee. You'll spend half your career finding people who don't want to be found. The other half, you'll spend making someone disappear completely. And by the end, you'll finally understand exactly how it feels from the other side. Right now, you're 23, and you think this job is about the chase. By the time this ends, you'll understand it was always about something else entirely. The space between being found and staying hidden, and how much of your life you'll spend standing in that space for other people. This is your life, rank by rank, inside the United States Marshals Service. The academy doesn't feel the way you expected. You came in ready for the physical side. The runs, the firearms qualification, the obstacle courses, and all of that is there, but it isn't what defines the first weeks. Your instructor is a man named Deputy Reyes, dry-humored, unhurried in a way that seems almost out of place in a building full of people trying to prove how fast they can move. Marshal Service is the oldest federal law enforcement agency in the country, and Reyes makes sure you feel that weight from day one, not as a burden, but as a standard. Everyone here wants to learn how to catch someone, you tell a classmate during a rare break. Reyes spent the first month teaching us how to wait. Patience, it turns out, is graded as rigorously as anything physical. And one trainee, sharp, fast, physically excellent, washes out not on the range, but during a surveillance exercise for moving too soon. It surprises everyone. It shouldn't have. Level 2. Deputy US Marshal. Your first posting isn't glamorous. Federal courthouse duty, prisoner transport, judicial security. The kind of work nobody depicts in the version of this job people imagine, and exactly the kind of work everything else depends on. Your senior partner, Deputy Okafor, has done this rotation longer than you've been alive in the profession, and he teaches you something that takes a while to sink in. Vigilance doesn't announce itself. It has to be maintained, even when, especially when, nothing appears to be happening. Nothing happened today, you tell him at the end of one particularly uneventful shift. Okafor said, that's the only kind of day we're actually trying for. Then, during a routine prisoner transport, an escape attempt happens fast and without warning. A moment of chaos that ends in seconds, resolved cleanly because of training you didn't realize you'd fully absorbed until you needed it. It's the first time the academy stops being theoretical. Level 3. Fugitive Task Force Member. You're assigned to a joint fugitive task force now, working alongside local police and other federal agencies toward the same targets. This is the work people picture when they think of marshals, except it looks nothing like the chase they imagine. Your task force lead, Marshal Delgado, reframes the entire job in your first week. We don't catch people, he tells you. We just make hiding harder than turning themselves in. Most of the work is unglamorous. Building informant relationships, verifying addresses, following the same quiet legwork for weeks before anything resembling action happens. I stopped thinking of it as a chase, you reflect, months into the rotation. It was just patience with a deadline. Your first solo-led case comes almost without ceremony. A location confirmed through weeks of careful groundwork that turns out to be exactly right. Nobody celebrates loudly. Delgado just nods, the way Reyes once did, like this was always supposed to be normal by now. Level 4. Senior Deputy Marshal. You're building your own caseload now, independent of direct supervision. Your own informant relationships, your own multi-state cases, your own judgment calls on when to move and when to wait. The cross-jurisdiction reach of the Marshal Service becomes clear at this level in a way it never quite was before. A fugitive can cross state lines, and you're one of the few people whose authority crosses with them seamlessly. One relationship matters more than most. A long-term informant named Ray, someone who's fed you reliable information for years in exchange for small, quiet favors that never quite rise to anything official. Ray never once asked me not to catch anyone, you reflect. He just wanted to be the reason it happened quietly. Then Ray gets into trouble of his own. Not related to any case you're working, just ordinary trouble. The kind that could expose him to people who wouldn't be happy to learn what he's been doing. You're left deciding how much of your own position you're willing to use protecting someone who was never technically owed that protection. Level 5, Task Force Supervisor. You're coordinating manhunts now instead of running them. Multiple deputies, multiple agencies, all converging toward a single target under your direction. The job shifts from field work to orchestration, and the stakes of a wrong call multiply with every person now depending on your judgment. A media liaison becomes a permanent fixture on the more high-profile cases, managing public perception against the practical realities of an active search, a balance that has nothing to do with catching anyone and everything to do with not losing control of the story around it. The manhunt was never just about finding him anymore, you realize partway through one particularly public case. It was about finding him before someone else's patience ran out. That patience runs out anyway. A detail leaks early. The case goes public ahead of schedule. And an operation you'd spent weeks building carefully now has to move faster and messier than anyone wanted. You get your fugitive. The manner of it teaches you more than the outcome does. Level 6, Chief Deputy. The work becomes administrative now in a way that surprises you, overseeing an entire district's operations, allocating resources, navigating interagency politics, making budget decisions that ripple down into field operations you no longer personally run. A younger deputy under your command keeps pushing for more aggressive tactics on a difficult case, convinced that speed matters more than patience. The same lesson Reyes once tried to teach you, except now you're the one responsible for teaching it, or overruling it. I used to think the job was about finding people, you reflect, reviewing a proposal you're about to send back for revision. Now, half of it was about deciding who got to look. A decision goes wrong eventually. Not catastrophically, but enough to matter. And it's clearly your call, not the field officer's. You absorb it the way chief deputies are expected to, quietly, without passing the weight of it down to the person who was just following the plan you approved. Level 7, Inspector, Special Operations Group. The Special Operations Group is the most elite tactical arm of the Marshals Service, reserved for the highest risk work, high-value fugitives, hostage situations, security response during natural disasters and civil unrest. The margin for error here is smaller than anywhere you've worked before. A teammate puts something into words during a quiet moment between deployments that stays with you longer than most operational briefings do. By now, you don't chase anyone anymore, he says. You just close every door before they know you're near one. You realize, turning the sentence over later, how completely your understanding of the job has inverted since level 1. I had become exactly what I spent 20 years hunting, you admit to yourself after one particularly clean operation. Someone who could disappear a problem before anyone noticed it existed. One operation in particular tests both sides of that same skill set at once. A capture and a protection detail running simultaneously. And you realize for the first time clearly how identical the underlying craft actually is. Level 8, WITSEC Inspector. This is where everything reverses. You're transferred to the Witness Security Program in Washington, and the core purpose of your entire career flips completely. For 30 years, your job was finding people who didn't want to be found. Now, your job is making sure someone can never be found again. Building a new identity from nothing, a new name, a fabricated work history, a relocated life, sometimes an entire family uprooted along with the one person whose testimony made all of it necessary. Your first major case is a woman named Mrs. Alvarez, a witness whose testimony will end up dismantling something significant and whose reward for that courage is the complete erasure of everything she's ever known. Her name, her home, her history, her relationships, all of it. permanently. I spent half my career learning how people hide, you reflect, reviewing the details of the identity being constructed for her. Now, I was the one designing the hiding place. Weeks into her relocation, Alvarez asks to reach out to someone from her old life. Just once, just briefly, nothing that should matter. You have to enforce the rule that says she can't, and something about saying no to her lands differently than any refusal you've given a fugitive. You understand, delivering that answer, exactly how much you're asking her to give up, because you spent decades on the other end of exactly this kind of disappearance. Level 9, Senior WITSEC Official. You're not managing individual cases anymore. You're architecting the entire system that other inspectors use, drawing directly on everything you once used to find people. Except now, every instinct is inverted to build the opposite outcome. The tactics that once caught fugitives become, in your hands, the blueprint for how to defeat those exact tactics. A young inspector, under your mentorship, reminds you more than once of yourself at level 1. Sharp, eager, still learning the difference between moving fast and moving correctly. I trained him to find people for 15 years, you reflect, watching him absorb a lesson about patience that Reyes once gave you. It took me one conversation to teach him how to make sure no one ever could. Then, a case fails. A protected witness, someone whose new identity was supposed to be airtight, is found. You don't yet know how, and the not knowing is its own particular kind of dread. It forces the darkest question your career has ever asked of you. After everything you've learned about finding people and hiding them, was any identity you ever built truly unbreakable, or just unbroken so far? Level 10, Retirement. You retire to a quiet, deliberately unremarkable life. The kind of ordinary that after 40 years in this work, you understand better than almost anyone how carefully ordinary has to be built to actually hold. Looking back, the shape of the career becomes clear in a way it never was while you were living it. Every fugitive you found had learned, one way or another, how to disappear, and you learned their methods well enough to undo them. Every witness you protected learned to disappear too, except with your help instead of despite it. 2 decades of finding, 2 decades of hiding people. You spent your entire working life on both sides of the exact same question. Your mentee, the young inspector you trained, the one who reminded you so much of yourself, runs the program now, senior in his own right, teaching someone else the same lessons Reyes once gave you in a training exercise you still remember more clearly than you'd expect, 40 years later. I spent 40 years teaching people how to disappear. In both directions, you say, to no one in particular, in the quiet, careful, ordinary life you built for yourself when it was finally your turn. I only ever wondered, at the very end, if I could still do it myself, if I had to. If this showed you what it costs to find people and to help them vanish, comment which agency you want broken down next. Subscribe if you're new here. This channel takes you somewhere most people only ever imagine from the outside.